A terrifying news story recently appeared online that literally exploded across the internet. According to it, the anomalous warming in Siberia isn't connected to climate change at all. The reason is far more serious. A massive super plume is rising beneath Siberia. According to some, in the coming years, it could break through to the surface, triggering a repeat of the Permian extinction in our time. For those who don't know, the Permian extinction occurred 252 million years ago. It was the greatest catastrophe in the planet's history. Back then, 90% of all life on Earth died. And it happened precisely in Siberia. Taking shelter from it was impossible. Now they're saying history could repeat itself. Moreover, they're naming a specific date range. Supposedly, this will happen within the next 10 years. The author of this theory is an American named Igor Chalakian, who presents himself as a physicist and climate specialist. His words sound frightening. Beneath Siberia lies a gigantic bubble of magma with a diameter of 2,000 kilometers. The temperature inside this bubble reaches 1,500 degrees Celsius. And this molten mass of rock is rising to the surface, melting the Earth's crust along the way. A massive eruption will cover the entire planet with ash. Sunlight won't be able to penetrate through the clouds of volcanic ash. The temperature will drop sharply. What they call volcanic winter will begin. Billions of people will be under threat. Debates started on social media. A video by this little-known scientist garnered millions of views. People shared terrifying predictions. Some even began seriously discussing evacuation plans. But here's where things get interesting. When other geologists, seismologists, and volcanologists looked at this theory, their reaction was mixed. On one hand, they say, yes, there really is something unusual beneath Siberia, but it's not that simple. Where did this theory even come from? Who's promoting it, and does it have any scientific basis? Why has Siberia actually gotten warmer? And most importantly, are we facing real danger? Or is this just another internet theory? It all started with a video that appeared online in 2023. On screen is an older man presenting himself as American physicist Igor Chalakian. He claims he worked at Harvard University, is a specialist in climate change and national security, and also a lobbyist in the American government. It sounds impressive. Chalakian comes forward with an alarming warning. According to him, the world's oceans can no longer handle cooling the Earth. The planet is overheating. And the reason isn't just global warming on the surface. The main threat comes from below, from the planet's depths. Beneath Siberia lies a gigantic mantle plume. Chalakian frightens people with numbers. If you compare it to Yellowstone, the famous American supervolcano that everyone's been talking about in recent years, then the Siberian superplume is approximately 100 times more powerful. This is all terrifying and interesting, of course, but what evidence did the scientists provide? Chalakian shows maps of temperature anomalies. And indeed, on these maps, you can see a bright red and black spot in the Siberian region. These are anomalous temperature deviations that supposedly originate from the planet's core. Siberia is warming 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the planet. Winters are getting warmer. The permafrost is melting. And here's where things get really interesting. Because in February 2025, residents of Tyumen actually experienced an abnormally warm winter. In early February, when 3 weeks still remained until calendar spring, the temperature rose to +2 degrees Celsius. Tree buds swelled. People mowed lawns in the city. British newspapers even mocked these shots of winter lawnmowers in Siberia. Local residents started getting nervous. Social media actively discussed Chalakian's video. Could this really be true? Could a giant volcano really be developing beneath the feet of millions of people, ready to explode at any moment? The theory gained details. Internet experts even proposed a solution to the problem. Artificial degassing is needed, they said. Drill several wells in safe locations. Release the excess pressure. Let the magma flow out quietly in small portions. The plume's pressure will decrease, and Siberia will be saved. It sounded quite logical for those who don't understand geology. But then, something strange emerged. None of the serious scientists could find any information about this Aegon Chalakian. Not a single publication in scientific journals. Not a single presentation at geological conferences. Harvard University didn't even list him among their staff. This is very strange for someone who supposedly is a lobbyist in the American government and a leading climate specialist. And then something else interesting came to light. It turned out authorities accused Chalakian in a court case of providing false information about his education and professional experience. In other words, his entire impressive resume was, to put it mildly, exaggerated. So does this mean it's all a hoax, a fake, created to attract attention? Possibly, but hold off on drawing conclusions. Because next comes the really interesting part of this story. 252 million years ago, a massive event occurred on the territory of modern Siberia that is still considered one of the greatest catastrophes in Earth's history. And yes, it really was a mantle plume, and its consequences were horrifying. Scientists estimate the volume of erupted magma at 5 million cubic kilometers. This is such a colossal number that it's impossible to imagine, but you can compare it. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed Pompeii, was approximately 4 cubic kilometers. That means the Siberian traps were like a million Vesuvius eruptions happening simultaneously. The eruption threw enormous volumes of carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur gases into the atmosphere. The planet suffocated. The oceans became acidic like vinegar. And this killed all life in the water. And then true hell began. Volcanic ash blocked out the sun. Volcanic winter arrived. The temperature dropped sharply. Approximately 90% of all living species on Earth died. This was the most massive extinction in the planet's history. For a long time, scientists didn't understand what exactly caused this catastrophe. There were theories about an asteroid, as with the dinosaurs, about climate change, and even about methane release from the ocean floor. But in recent decades, enough evidence has accumulated that the culprit is precisely the Siberian traps. This giant volcanism killed almost all life. Modern geology explains it like this. Deep underground, at the boundary between the mantle and the core, at a depth of approximately 3,000 kilometers, special regions exist. They're called large, low shear velocity provinces. Simply put, these are gigantic reservoirs of hotter and denser material. Sometimes, vertical streams of molten mantle rock break out from these regions. They rise upward toward the planet's surface. Such a stream is called a mantle plume. That's exactly what happened 252 million years ago beneath what would become Siberia. A gigantic superplume rose from the mantle's depths and broke through the crust. We already know the result. A catastrophe of planetary scale. So, the ancient superplume erupted 252 million years ago. It would seem that after such a colossal amount of time, no traces of it should remain. That's true, but not entirely. In recent years, geophysicists have conducted large-scale studies of the subsurface beneath northern Asia. They used the most modern methods: seismic tomography, magnetotelluric sounding, analysis of gravitational anomalies, and discovered something unexpected. Beneath Siberia, at a depth of 400 to 700 kilometers, in what's called the Mantle Transition Zone, lies a region with anomalous properties. Seismic waves pass through it more slowly than usual. Electrical conductivity is elevated. Temperature is above average. What does this mean? Geophysicists interpret this as a residual thermal anomaly. Simply put, a trace of the ancient plume. It didn't disappear without a trace. The enormous volume of molten material that rose from the mantle's depths couldn't simply dissolve. Moreover, scientists have found signs of partial melting in this region. That is, some portion of the mantle material there is still in a semi-molten state. Scientists have named this structure the Permian anomaly, and it almost exactly coincides with the location of the ancient Siberian traps on the surface. This is direct evidence of the connection between the ancient eruption and the modern mantle structure. But that's not all. Geophysicists studied the composition of mantle xenoliths. These are pieces of mantle rock that volcanoes sometimes bring to the surface. In Yakutia and eastern Siberia, there are plenty of such xenoliths. Their analysis revealed something curious. The rocks bear traces of metasomatism. This is chemical alteration that occurs when hot melts pass through rock. In other words, the mantle beneath Siberia was modified, and these changes have survived to our day. Another important point is the isotopic composition of helium. In some gas fields of eastern Siberia, scientists have found helium with a high ratio of helium-3 to helium-4 isotopes. This is a classic sign of a deep mantle source, characteristic specifically of plumes. So the connection with the mantle's depths persists even now. So yes, there really is something unusual beneath Siberia, the remnant of an ancient superplume. But does this mean we're facing a new catastrophe? Doctor of Geological and Mineralogical Sciences, Ivan Kulikov studied the data regarding this theory. His conclusions are unequivocal. If an active plume ready to erupt were currently located beneath Siberia, this would be visible in all geophysical fields. First, gravity. Hot magma is lighter than surrounding rocks. If a large body of magma existed at shallow depth, scientists would observe a powerful gravitational anomaly on the surface, but no such anomalies are observed in Siberia. Second, seismic models. A whole series of high-resolution global models of Earth's internal structure exists. They allow scientists to see the mantle's structure with accuracy down to tens of kilometers. If a large superplume ready to erupt were located there, it would appear as an enormous anomaly with reduced seismic velocities, but this is not observed. Third, heat flow. Chalakian claims that Siberia is heating from below from the plume, but the data show the opposite. The warming in Siberia is occurring from above, from the atmosphere. This is normal warming, it's just happening faster at high latitudes. Even in Kamchatka, where volcanoes with magma are located literally a few kilometers beneath the surface, the soil heats minimally. Volcanoes become covered with snow just like the surrounding mountains, because heat transfer from the Earth's depths occurs very slowly. The contribution of underground heat to surface temperature is an order of magnitude less than the contribution of solar radiation. So, the warm winter in Tyumen and other Siberian cities is an ordinary climatic phenomenon related to warming and changes in atmospheric circulation, nothing more. But here a legitimate question arises. If everything is so calm, why have earthquakes become more frequent in Siberia in recent years? Is this connected to the Siberian plume? Some researchers believe that yes, the ancient plume could have weakened the lithosphere in this region, made it more susceptible to stretching. But this is an indirect connection. The plume isn't causing the earthquakes, lithospheric plate movement causes them, and the crust weakened by the ancient plume simply makes this movement more noticeable. And regarding the increase in the number of earthquakes, scientists say this is a complex question. On one hand, modern seismic networks register far more events than before. Now, every tremor ends up in the database, so part of the increase is simply improved observation. On the other hand, there's natural cyclicality in seismic activity. Periods of calm alternate with periods of activation. This is normal. In the middle of the 20th century, in the 1950s, Siberia also experienced a wave of earthquakes. Then everything calmed down. Now it seems a new active period has begun. Moreover, most of Siberia's territory, especially the northern part, sits on the stable Siberian platform. This is one of the most ancient and stable sections of the Earth's crust. Seismic danger here is minimal, but southern Siberia is a different matter. Here runs the boundary with more mobile structures, and earthquakes happen more frequently. But even in the south, destructive earthquakes are extremely rare. Most tremors have intensities of 3 to 4. This is noticeable, sometimes frightens people, but doesn't lead to serious destruction. The strongest recorded earthquake in Krasnoyarsk dates to 1858. Back then, scientists estimated the intensity at 6 to 7, but there weren't many casualties. More than 1.5 centuries have passed since then, and nothing comparable in scale has occurred. Well, let's imagine the worst-case scenario. Imagine that tomorrow, right now, a new mantle plume starts rising from the mantle's depths. But we would see all of this in advance, well ahead of time. No sudden explosions can occur. Right now, none of what was listed is being observed in Siberia. The surface isn't rising, gravity is normal. Seismic models don't show an active plume at shallow depth. New volcanoes aren't appearing. Well, let's return to the main question. Where did this panic even come from? Why did people believe a little-known scientist? Chalakian uses classic conspiracy techniques, references to secret sources, accusations that scientists are staying silent, appeals to world leaders, a precise date for the catastrophe. All of this creates an illusion of credibility. But the reality is this: real scientists aren't staying silent. They actively study the Siberian region, publish articles in scientific journals, conduct expeditions, analyze data. Yes, there's a residual thermal anomaly beneath Siberia. It's a trace of the ancient superplume that has some influence on the region's modern geology. But this influence is minimal and currently poses no danger. That's all. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos.